There are things you can live with in games, and then there are things that simply won't do. Where Winds Meet does some things much better than most games, especially MMOs and online free-to-plays. World is well done in many ways, for example. Not just beautiful and detailed, but also it feels like a living, breathing one. There's tons of unique and repeatable stuff to do. For example, like using Mystic Art Meridian Touch to stop a thief and then turning him in. Then stealing with Celestial Seas. Mystic Art's usage is a particular highlight of the game for me. Throwing bears around with Tai Chi never gets old. Most of the content though is quite mediocre, with occasional good story like the side stories that revolve around exploring hidden areas and finding about mythical history, like the Lunar Goddess for example. Occasional interesting wandering tale, but most things are just mid, with few bad ones like the minigames. Never understood the point of these time-wasting minigames. They are not exciting or well made in any way, and add nothing but a different shallow gameplay dynamic. Not a good one in any way, you basic bastards. The Gift of Gab is an interesting approach that isn't bad at all once given a chance. Problem is that tutorial for it is horrible, and how fast it plays out it's difficult to understand what the hell is going on. Also balancing of this minigame is quite bad. Sometimes it's difficult as heck, while other times it's piss easy, makes no sense. But I digress from the main issue, you impatient bastards. Most would guess it's the menus. Yes, menus are some of the worst I've seen in the history of gaming, and currently the biggest issue that is going to be fixed eventually, I hope. At least it's fixable. 15,000 menus to go through to claim rewards that are almost always the same is incredibly unrewarding. There are constant gameplay interruptions with unlocks that require interaction with these damn menus. It breaks the immersion that the world creates because menus are not organic part of the world, are they now? Awful, but it's not the main issue, as it's fixable.
His symbol.
Whoa! Is that a secret code?
Main issue is also not the weak English voice acting, especially incredibly annoying Ruby. She's the reason why I had to switch to Chinese.
Maybe this has something to do with Uncle Jiang. I should look inside.
What you looking for? I'll help. So much dust. Is that a spear? Hey, look! There's a spear! A real one!
Careful.
There are also quite a few localization issues with subpar skill descriptions and the way it's presented. The game offers tons of customization options, but for me playing a game with the focus on how to make my character look eventually is a giant waste of time, unless there is something deeper gameplay wise to hold my interest due to games like these, this including being mostly checklist of bullshit to go through. Also, I'm completely lost in these customization menus. Jesus Christ, give me an edit option and that's it, not all this plan makeup and whatever else bollocks. So the main issue for me that kills the longevity entirely due to world itself not being able to carry on its own shoulders the entirety of the game is the gameplay itself. Combat to be specific. Combat is mid at best unfortunately, and it hurts a game like this a lot. What is supposed to be its strongest aspect, it's one of the weaker ones unfortunately. Combat is basic skill spam, that's it. There's almost nothing going on under the hood outside of few things that trigger here and there from gear bonuses. For people that like flashy without substance, perfect, but longevity of combat appeal lies in depth quality, something that Where Winds Meet severely lacks. Weapons are great and abilities are nice from these few weapons that I've played, but the problem lies in the fundamentals of this combat system. What it ends up is a basic phase tank. And the only difficulty comes from enemies that do stupid amounts of damage while phase tanking your attacks, where you get stuck and can't do anything. It's the same issue as with many other games that simply don't understand what makes combat fundamentally great. There's an obvious lack of any methodical approach. Problem is in the enemy design, especially bosses that are terrible. They expose faults of the combat system. You might not see these faults as much if playing in co-op, but playing solo it's quite evident. As soon as I see bosses doing this, I know that boss designs are going to be crap in general. It's what has become now, thanks to Elden Ring, a typical cheesy difficulty design that focuses on delayed attacks with instant attack animations, usually afterwards. To make matters worse, bosses love to recover and counter when you're in the middle of an attack. This game without a doubt has some of the cheesiest boss difficulty I've seen yet, especially this cunt. Tried playing on legendary but switched to expert after reaching this boss. The amount of bullshit exposes the combat system entirely and all of its flaws. Hitboxes are mediocre as things can hit even if you've safely dodged an attack. Combine that with sometimes tons of effects on the screen that mask parts of the attack animations that are usually very fast, sometimes even instant, and you get tons of cheap deaths due to silly damage that bosses do at times. With lack of healing options, it can get incredibly cheap and frustrating. As soon as the boss fight plays out in a way that I have to get all the timings down in order to have a chance, I know that developers fucked up. That's not organic combat difficulty, but memory-based combat difficulty. And even that can't help as much because enemies don't have any underlying systems like the poise system, stamina or anything else. They just spam all the time and trap you when doing skills and counter retaliation when there's nothing you can do. Reaction window is also quite small due to fast animations. Especially instant animations that occur more times than I'd like because they have no telegraph that would give an indication something is coming. Then the only way to counter these moves is to either attempt a lucky dodge or to know bosses by heart what follows after each attack. It's doable as bosses stick to their patterns for the most part, but due to our limited stamina and no pattern of when the instant poise recovery counterattack is coming, memory can only help partially. These quick counterattacks with fast animations are some of the cheapest and cheesiest difficulty I've seen in a long time. Often comes after we use a skill that fails to break the poise. Some skills break the poise almost always, but it also depends what the boss is doing at that exact moment. This is where a lack of methodical approach is obvious, as there is no indication when something is going to work and when it's not. There's also no real poise system, as it is connected more to the skill used, but there's no guarantee as well. This is why a lot of the fights end up as phase tank versus phase tank, in which players lose because they barely scratch bosses while bosses do insane damage usually. Most bosses are bullet sponges, by the way, which makes things even more cheesy. I've attempted World Boss at level 30 on Legendary, which is a recommended level, and ended up hitting the bastard 500,000 times while he could finish me in a couple shots. Not to mention all the mid-air tracking adjustments while you have already moved out of the way of a potentially dangerous attack. Tracking in this game is quite bad and it makes combat play like it's on an assembly line. Very little freedom of movement. And tracking is quite inconsistent, as few normal enemy attacks don't have that much of it, but then suddenly another attack is a guided missile. Again, a lack of methodical approach. Then there is another thing that drives me nuts. Cheap and cheesy to a maximum degree. Sometimes bosses do combo attacks, and if one of the attacks hit, others will as well, and there is nothing you can do about it. This takes huge chunks of health, which means using a health potion is a must afterwards. And there's only 2 or 3 early on unless grinding for more. So there's very little room for error in long fights where things are chaotic without proper method and precision. Great. Look at what Brainiacs have done with block and parry. While blocking, player still takes damage. In a game that has some of the cheesiest and cheap difficulty designs I've ever seen, block doesn't block all the damage. Brilliant. Especially considering there is no skill attack cancel, which leaves players wide open for a cheap counter attack bollocks. Thankfully there is normal and heavy attack cancel, but skill usage is necessary to stunlock bosses at least a bit to do some serious damage. None of the bosses beaten so far would I like to fight again, because the fights suck due to lack of combat fundamentals and incredibly cheap boss design. As soon as I saw first boss doing her best flying monkey impression frequently throughout the fight, it was all clear. It's going to be one of those games where people are going to see fantastic animations and flashy combos which can make lollipops in their pants wet due to aesthetics, but underneath it all is a very shallow and fundamentally flawed design. Not even gonna go that much into stealth and how bad that is. Video speaks 1,000 words. Where Winds Meet has some strong designs, but generally speaking it's nothing more than a mediocre or decent game from a single player perspective, at least from what I've seen so far. Probably much more enjoyable in co-op, where these fundamental flaws are not as easily spotted and don't affect the game as much. Can't say, haven't played in co-op. I'll see how some of the guides are doing over time to see if it's worth it for me to continue playing. Mediocre gameplay is a big turn off despite some good stuff. Anyway, thanks for watching.